They thought they had buried me. They thought they had pushed me into a corner where I'd wither away, invisible, irrelevant, forgotten. Retirement wasn't something I chose. It was forced on me. One day, I was the man holding everything together, and the next, I was just a faded figure, discarded like yesterday's newspaper. The whispers in the corridors, the fake smiles, the carefully worded HR letters. It was all a knife dressed as kindness. When they handed me the envelope with the word retirement printed neatly across the top, I knew what it really meant. They didn't want me anymore. They wanted someone younger, someone cheaper, someone who didn't remind them of the foundations on which their so-called empire was built. I signed the papers that day with a steady hand, but inside, a storm was brewing. You see, they never considered that a man like me carries more than memories. I carried stories, connections, and one secret so heavy it could shatter their entire empire with a single breath. But secrets, they're like matches. You don't light them until the night is darkest. The months after retirement were hell. I woke up early out of habit, dressed in pressed shirts, polished my shoes, only to sit alone at the table with a cup of lukewarm coffee. My days stretched long and empty, while theirs were filled with meetings, headlines, and champagne. Every time I read about their success in the papers, my jaw clenched tighter. They thought they'd erased me. They thought wrong. It was on a Thursday afternoon when the invitation arrived. A glossy card, embossed with golden letters. The grand celebration of our greatest achievement. They were launching their largest project yet. A spectacle that would draw press, investors, even international figures. It was their biggest day. Their crowning moment. I laughed when I read it. Oh, the irony. They invited me. Out of pity, maybe, or as some token gesture of respect for the old man. They thought I'd show up quietly, clap politely, and fade into the shadows like a ghost. But ghosts don't fade. Ghosts haunt. That night, I pulled out the old leather folder from the back of my drawer. Inside lay the secret I had been holding for years. Documents, signatures, recordings. The kind of evidence that could burn their empire to ash. I had promised myself I'd never use it, that I'd leave the past buried. But betrayal changes a man. Being forced into retirement, discarded like trash, that changes everything. The day of the event arrived. The hall was glittering with chandeliers, filled with the scent of expensive wine and the sound of artificial laughter. Everyone was dressed in silken suits, diamonds catching the light with every fake smile. I walked in wearing the same gray suit they once mocked me for, my shoes shining like mirrors. Whispers followed me immediately. Asterisk, there he is. The old man. Why is he here? Asterisk. I didn't flinch. I didn't bow my head. I moved slowly through the room, the weight of my secret pressing against my chest. I knew exactly what I carried, and I knew exactly when I would drop it. When the speeches began, they all lined up on stage, smiling, confident, drunk on their own success. They spoke about legacy, about progress, about the future. Each word dripped with arrogance. Each phrase erased the people who had actually built the foundations, people like me. Then came the final speech, the crowning jewel. The room fell silent, cameras flashing, the world watching. They toasted their victory, their empire, their unbreakable image. That was my moment. I rose from my chair. Slowly, deliberately. Every eye turned to me. Some curious, some irritated. They expected me to shuffle out, to excuse myself, maybe even collapse from old age. But instead, I walked to the center aisle, my footsteps echoing louder than their applause. The microphone stood unattended, gleaming beneath the spotlight. I reached it without hesitation. My hand didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. Tonight, I began. You celebrate your greatest achievement. But before you raise another glass, before you engrave another lie into history, there's something everyone here deserves to know. The room froze. Cameras zoomed in. Faces paled. I held up the leather folder. The one they had forgotten. The one they had prayed would never resurface. This, I said, is the one secret you couldn't bury. The secret you thought I would take quietly into retirement. But here I am. And tonight, I won't be silent. The gasps rippled through the room like waves. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The silence in the hall was deafening. You could hear glasses trembling in hands, forks clinking nervously against porcelain plates. The folder in my hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds, but I knew I couldn't stop now. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment they feared would never come. I looked directly at the men on the stage, the same ones who had laughed behind closed doors when they forced me into retirement. Their faces drained of color, their lips pressed tight, but their eyes screamed. They knew what I had. They knew exactly what was about to happen. "You talk about legacy," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the hall. "But what is a legacy built on? Hard work? Vision? Sacrifice? No, yours was built on lies, on deception, on theft." Gasps echoed. A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. The cameras flashed like lightning, desperate to capture every word. I opened the folder, pulled out the first sheet of paper, and held it high. "This," I continued, "is the document proving that the land you claimed was donated for the public good was, in fact, stolen, bought under false signatures, forged by your own hands. And I should know. I was the one you asked to sign off on it." Murmurs swelled into shouts. Reporters rushed forward, microphones extended. Panic rippled across the stage. The one at the center, their so-called leader, stepped forward. His voice was strained, but he tried to keep it steady. "This man is confused. He's elderly. He doesn't know what he's saying." That was their mistake. They thought I'd crumble under ridicule, just like they forced me to when they called me outdated, when they pushed me aside. But not tonight. "Confused," I snapped. "You mean like these recordings?" I pulled out a small device, pressed play, and suddenly the hall was filled with their own voices. Meetings behind closed doors, discussing forged deals, silencing whistleblowers, mocking the very people they exploited. Their words echoed louder than mine ever could. "Make sure the old man doesn't get in the way. He'll retire soon, or we'll make him. Once he's out, no one will question us." The crowd erupted. Half the hall gasped in horror, the other half shouted in fury. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras swung to capture every reaction. The leaders on stage stood frozen, their empire crumbling right before their eyes. "You forced me into retirement because you thought I was weak," I said, my voice low but sharp. "But I kept every receipt, every lie, every crime. And tonight, on your biggest day, I'm giving it back to you, piece by piece, in front of the world." The leader's face twisted with rage. He tried to shout over me, but the crowd drowned him out. Some guests booed. Others demanded answers. A few even stormed toward the stage. The perfect celebration had turned into chaos. I wasn't finished. I held up the final paper, the one they feared most. "This," I declared, "is the contract tying your empire to offshore accounts, bribes, and laundering schemes. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed every single person who trusted you. Investors, workers, families. You sold them lies while you pocketed their future." For a moment, the hall was utterly still. My words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Then the dam broke. Reporters surged forward. Guests shouted accusations. The leaders tried to flee the stage, but the cameras followed them, flashing like 1,000 unblinking eyes. I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, and stepped back from the microphone. My work was done. I had lit the match. The fire would take care of the rest. As I walked toward the exit, people moved aside. Some looked at me with awe, others with gratitude, a few with tears in their eyes. No one dared call me, just the old man anymore. Outside, the cool night air hit my face. I drew in a long breath, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. Behind me, the hall descended into pandemonium, sirens wailing, reporters shouting, lives unraveling. For so long, they thought they had won. They thought forcing me into retirement meant silencing me forever. But what they never understood was this. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do in the shadows. It's stepping into the spotlight and tearing down the lie with the truth. And on their biggest day, I walked in with the one secret they couldn't ignore. The empire they built on stolen foundations had finally collapsed. And me, I didn't need applause. I didn't need headlines. All I needed was the satisfaction of knowing they would never sleep peacefully again, because they thought they buried me. But I wasn't buried. I was planted, and tonight I bloomed.